in Cape Town. He had a problem with his foot or something. He used to wear a boot to correct the problem that was on the foot. And then later, he went to Emahlobeni to live with our maternal grandmother, uMadlamini, Mrs. Ndondo. Then in 1970, towards the end of 1970, uMakhulu passed away. And therefore, Bathandwa, after that time, joined the rest of the cousins in Cala at my home, Kwansebeza. He joined Unondumiso, Umanelisi, who is now late, Ukoleka, Usisiwe, and Usbungi. Bonke abantu ke banezithulwana zabo. Unondumiso was called Ndumi, Umanelisi Nature, Usbongi Lesboshi, njalo 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 njalo. So sanaba abantwana bayi-6 ke bancinci kuthi they are our cousins, but they were staying at my home. They funda Cala village. That's where Bathandwa naye joined them, wafunda Cala village. I am not sure by matric yakhe I mean high school yakhe wayenzaphi kudala ndimane ndicinga benditshilo napha kwi-video. All I know is that in 1980 he got his matric, and then he was admitted at the then University of Transkei unit for further studies. I remember about the first few months or the first year, he stayed with us number 4 Nduli Crescent, Mthatha, not far from the Mthatha Hospital. Emania attenda ke university. Then the following year, course 2, the second year, wahlala ke ngoku eRes, and he became involved in the student unrest and things, whatever. Kuba ke activist, he was a student activist. And he was subsequently expelled from a university. UNITRAC is now called Walter Sisulu University. So he went back to Cala, or Shalapaya, no Ulungisile. Because Ulungisile at that time was running a bookshop. And I think Lontialo bookshop and the other things may also have played a role in the activism kaBathandwa. Wafumana umsebenzi with a Cape Town based company okanye organization, healthcare trust. And he was working there with Umilani most of the time, and the other people. They would go to the rural communities and work with the people there. And I was made to understand that the main thing was for them to get drinking water, clean drinking water. They worked with them to provide them with clean drinking water, water that flows from the mountains, then binds again, so that it can be used for drinking. The famous photo Bathandwa abonwa ngayo, where he had the blanket, was taken during those days as a healthcare trust when he was working. So that's how Bathandwa grew. He grew in a family, an extended family, because there were Ndondos, there were Sebenzas, there were Mabonas, there were Dumos, And most of the times, Dibane as this one big family, especially on Sundays. And my mother would cook her Sunday best, and we would put all those plates on the table because Mama didn't want to share from one plate. So that's the one thing that I remember about that time. Although most of the year I was away, Kuba, I was already at university when these children were doing their primary education. And then I got married. But I know that we grew up inside in that kind of a warm home. So to the youth of today, I just want to say to them that there are more opportunities that they have won in 2020 than Bathandwa had during his student days. My concern with today's youth is that they don't seem to be taking up these opportunities that they get and doing something with their lives. Education is the best key. It opens most doors. I know that we have shortcomings with our education. There's a lot that needs to be done, but we can't just stand away and say we'll wait until things have improved before we do something. That's my message to today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tatabawa. Prof, do you want to have any additions to what Tatabawa said?
Hey, ngizama ulayita le video ninibona uba ndisaphila ndingumuntu okhoyo. Okay, good. No, I don't have much not to say about the earlier phase of Bathandwa. I see that I feature later on in the program to talk about the circumstances that led to the murder of Bathandwa and what happened after. So I would rather devote more time speaking about Bathandwa then. What I can say about the young Bathandwa, I mean, he died young. You know, the young Bathandwa, you know, as narrated by my sister, is that I know very, very little about him because of my education. I was at boarding school in Mthatha when Bathandwa went to my home, eCala, ayohlala no mama, my mother, which would have been, my sister said, I think early 70s, 71, 72. I went to boarding school at St. John's College in 1969. So I met him as a young child amongst many who were staying in the family. And so I had no real interactions with him. And 1970, in fact, 1970, 71, I remember well, we started a tradition of going to school during the year and during holidays going to Cape Town. So there was very, very little contact that I had with the children that grew in our family. And then there was 73, went to 40, and in that year, we were expelled, and Forte and I went to Mthatha, decided to be independent stayed in Umtata with Tatu Slinger, Melkolo Slinger, Godfrey Slinger, and we became involved in politics, study groups and so on, and political activities that led to our arrest in 1976. So 76 to 81 we were in prison. What I can say before saying more about Bathandwa in the last session, what I can say about him, I can remember, is that in 1981, after my mother passed away, whilst we were still in prison, and we started receiving letters from prison when we were in prison. We started receiving letters from Batandwa, Manelisi, writing to us. And I mean, comparing the two, Manelisi, Batandwa, I could see that Batandwa, though he was younger than Onaja, Batandwa was quite mature, and he was commenting about what was happening then, and looking forward to our release. That so I could distinguish between the two in terms of their interest politically. Manelis was doing accounting and was more interested in his accounting work, something that he became famous, of. And but Bathandwa, even in those early days, I could see that he was interested, in political activities. So when we were released at the end of 81, and I met him, we stayed together in December 1981, I could see that he was very much interested in politics. And 82, I started a bookshop. And in that bookshop, people who were in Tsala at the time will remember that the bookshop was not only selling stationery or textbooks and so on, school material, we're also selling political material. And Bathandwa read a lot of the books, the political literature that we had in the bookshop. And I worked with people like Victor Ngaleka, on 3 Ntwana and so on. We worked during the day in the bookshop, but in the evenings, we used to have reading sessions, reading political literature, and Bathandwa was an active member of that group. And as my sister indicated, Bathandwa was an activist, was very much involved in student politics, possibly beyond student politics. And I remember that whenever they had discussions elsewhere, their student sessions, Bathandwa would come back and share their experiences. And where advice was needed, he would put an issue on the table, would discuss it, and in many ways arm him for debates and discussions they obviously had in their circles as students. So, I mean, for now, this is what now I would want to say about Bathandwa. But the next phase of Bathandwa, where I'll start in the afternoon, is when Bathandwa was expelled and stayed for a much longer time with me in Tsala, same house, and so on. But I'll say more about that in the afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Prof and Tatubao about telling us about the upbringing of Bathandwa. We're gonna hand over to Comrade Mteto, and who will lead the program. Comrade Mteto, can you take us away?
Okay, thanks, Bora. Morning, friends and comrades. I've been asked to just chair these sessions, and hopefully, I think we'll keep on on the time. If the way we'll do this, comrades, will allow speakers to put their points. They've got the program, and I'll appeal to them to try and stick to time. And for other comrades, we have there's an option to make comments via chat. So we'll appeal if comrades have comments to what speakers have to say, they can do that. There are comrades, Comrade Gura and Comrade Loazi will monitor the chat and will then provide a summary of the key issues that are raised by the people who have commented. So at this point, we're having Nkosi Patekile Olomise, who will speak about Gura at UNITRA. And after that, we'll get Uma Forest, Molo Kaban Uma Forest. Then you'll speak about how Bora influenced student activism. Welcome, Comrade Pategile and Nkosi Pategile Olomise. The floor is yours. Thanks.
Oh. Sorry about this. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Program Director. I had just been asking for the program ithini na. Then ke ngoku ndivase kusithiwa mandingene. Andiyazi imizuzu ondipha yona noma mingaphina. Mhlawumbe ngaphambili if you could indicate so that ndingaphoxi iprogram yakho. Okanye ndinqanda ke xa ndintyuntya kakhulu.
No. Okay.
Maybe Nkosi, we can give you maybe 10 to 15 minutes maximum. Yeah.
Okay. Program Director, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for seeing it proper that I be part of this program to talk about Bathandwa Ndondo, with whom I spent some time at the University of Transkei. Program Director, I've never been able to fathom why so gentle a soul, so decent a human being, such as Comrade Bathandwa Ndondo was, that even a soulless regime and its debased security apparatus would be driven to seeing him as such a threat to its existence, that they saw fit to murder him like a dog at his home in broad daylight, in the full glare of the members of his community. If I remember well, one of his assailants had been a fellow student at UNITRA at some stage and would have known the character of the person of Bathandwa. No matter how much she had been turned into a heartless askari by her flag plus handlers, her humanity ought to have overridden the desire to please her handlers. As a trained apartheid agent, at least she would have known that at the end of the day, whatever political activities Bathandwa might have engaged in was for her own ultimate benefit as well. She was, after all, together with her fellow murderers, as oppressed as Bathandwa was. Alas, the UNITRA of our times, and even the Transkei so-called state itself, was a contradiction of a peculiar kind. Just like the territory itself, UNITRA compared to other Black universities in apartheid South Africa could at times be considered a liberated zone. We could live and go on about our lives as if we were truly free. Lecturers that were persona non grata in apartheid South Africa were invited to teach at the university. I may mention here Professors Twatemaya, Vilakazi, Painsma, and Ralefeto, as well as Shabani. Their lecture rooms would be filled to capacity even by students who had not registered for the courses they took. This all happened because there was academic freedom not enjoyed or even dreamed of elsewhere. The library was full of books that were banned in the rest of the country. We devoured them, Bathandwa, in all our search for the truth. In all of this, we have to bear in mind that UNITRA had a student body that was made up of ordinary students, as well as those who were civil servants, including security branch police. Yet this state of affairs continued for years, until it must have reached the ears of apartheid South Africa that something was amiss in the model child of separate development, that was the Transkei. Pressure was brought to bear on the homeland regime to deal with this clearly unintended state of affairs. Suddenly, our lecturers were deported to the borders of the Transkei and banned from ever setting foot on the territory's soil. This was the beginning of the decline of the standard of education at the university, when academic freedom was thus destroyed. Umkhabulo that Bathandwa and a lot of us had imbibed from these lectures remained in our system, though even after these lecturers had left. Bathandwa was a likable person. In fact, there was no reason not to like him. He was affable, chubby, fun, full of laughter at the slightest provocation. Previously, the leadership of the SRC was very corrupt, given to throwing parties in the Mthatha town and especially at the main and modern Holiday Inn, made up of students, some of whom were civil servants, working in the highest offices of the Transkei government. When their gross mismanagement of the finances could no longer be tolerated by administration and got disbanded, house committees were instituted. Bathandwa was one of the leading members of these committees. When the time came for the SRC to be revived, he was duly and naturally elected to be one of our representatives on it. UNITRA was not a politically active institution to the extent of being known to be a base for activities such as those associated with the military wings of the ANC, PAC, or even AZAPO at the time. We did not know each other as underground activists, even though a few would know of the identities of the other. I've said it at the beginning that whatever role Bathandwa played in the underground, it could never have warranted his assassination, both because his struggle was for a noble cause and the fact that his was a gentle soul. South Africa did indeed lose a leader who would have ensured that a better life for all in a free South Africa became a reality. I thank you, Program Director.
Wow.
Thanks, Kosi particular, for sharing with us that experience. And one wonders what role you would have played in this new South Africa, and what attitude you would have taken to some of the things that the ruling party is doing. Comrade Malibongwe, the floor is yours. Comrade Malibongwe Kolo. The comrade is going to share with us how Bathandwa influenced activism in Kala. Comrade Kolo, floor is yours. Comrade Kolo, ukona?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm trying to put on the video.
Okay.
Yeah, firstly, let me apologize for logging on about 5 or so minutes late into this auspicious meeting. I'm currently in Cape Town due to work commitments, but I committed that I would join. But where I'm booked into, I had to check out so that I can join this meeting. So I apologize for that delay. But I think I will also follow on the good steps of Nkosi Wolomisa and take just a few minutes so that I can allow other people to, utilize the remaining time and make their own comments. Mine is only four points really that I want to raise. Firstly, is that most of the young people of Kala around 84, 85 did not necessarily know Comrade Bathandwa personally, because as has been said by various speakers, he was busy with other activities outside of our area. But I did have occasion to meet him as a young man. I was fairly younger at that time. I had occasion to meet him around 84 in an area called Kwatilia. I think those of us abakulele Kala will know that area, Kwatilia, Ngakwajo, and so forth. I met him there, and he sent me on an errand which is obviously common among Obuti, Abedibana Nati, Makwedinana Mancinci. I won't go into the details of the errand, but you can draw your own conclusions as to what kind of errand that was. He sent me to a certain house for his own personal visits. But it was in 85 that I actually remembered who that person was who sent me on that errand the year before. When we heard about his death, which actually raised a sleeping giant among the youth and students of Kala. As I said earlier on, we did not necessarily know much about him. Yes, we were hearing about other activists. I think the likes of Matthew Koniwe had just been in the news earlier. And in 85, when we heard that someone from our own town was killed by apartheid askaris, apartheid agents in our own town, and we had the words that his assailants actually used, because it's common knowledge that these people are said to have said, "Sibulele lenja, ifile lenja," using the word inja repeatedly. That type of activity actually raised our concern about the activities that were being conducted by what we thought at that time was the Matanzima regime, which we later understood that it was actually some of those people were from outside of the former Transkei. It really raised our interest into understanding what was really happening in our town and among the political setup in our area and in South Africa generally. So in 1986, a year after Bathandwa's death, the students of Kala, led by a number, some of you are here, I won't mention the names. The students of Kala took it upon themselves to arrange the inaugural commemoration of Bathandwa Ndondo's death. And it was that inaugural commemoration that was led by students from both Kala High School, where I was a student studying in 86, but also together with our colleagues from Matanzima High School. That commemoration catapulted into the student body politic of Kala a culture of political awareness. it raised a very, very big, it actually fanned a very, very hot, if you like, revolutionary fire in Cala, which could never be stopped. It is my understanding that flowing from the inaugural commemoration of Bathandwa Ndondo's death in '85, a number of activities took place, not only in Cala, but also in other surrounding towns. And that can only be attributed to Bathandwa's spirit, which united all of us as students around Cala and in surrounding towns. And there is quite a number of other activities that then took place following us having been expelled from Cala and some of our colleagues having left town. But the spirit lived on. And I think that it is that spirit which actually is still in the young leaders that I see today, those that are leading in CALUSA. It is that spirit of Bathandwa Ndondo which still keeps the activism of the people of Cala still going on. I will pause there. Party Mteto, and then I will allow others to make comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Comrade Malbongwe. Comrade monitors of the chat, are you watching there? If you can just summarize what came out from those charts, and we could give maybe one or two comrades to comment. First, can we hear from the charts, comrade monitors? Are there issues from the Facebook and this chart here? Comrade Loaz.
Thank you, comrade. Yes. There are 2 points that have been raised so far. One is saying it would be interesting to hear how Nkosi or Lumisa thinks Bathandwa could react to the current state of the country and the levels of corruption. And one is asking, I wonder where those murderers are now and whether they made an appearance at the TRC. Did the family ever consider a commission of inquiry so that they could be prosecuted? Such people must be named and shamed for the whole world to know their identity. That's it so far.
Okay, thanks, Comrade Loazi. I think we'll leave the comment around the TRC for the afternoon. Comrade Nkosi Pategile would want to just comment on that comment from the chat.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairperson, again. Well, it's easy for people to say if someone was here in these times, such and such would not have been happening. But I can say it without any fear of contradiction that Comrade Bathandwa would have been on the side of those who are appalled by what is happening, who detest the corruption that is as a way of life. He was a simple man, as those of us who met him know. See, there's this iconic picture of his where he's wearing the gyali, and that shows the humility that he has. And when everybody else would be wearing modern European clothes, but so and even though when he was expelled, I think I was no longer there, I was at the University of Natal. There was no attachment of any corruption of any kind to him while he was leader of the SRC. So I am definite that he would have been on the side of those who fight corruption. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, was Pategile. Anyone want to comment, one or two comrades, and then we can move? I'm looking for the hand. Is there someone want to comment?
There's one comment here. It says, can anyone share about Bathandwa's high school activism? There's also one that just came in. Many institutions of higher learning are confronted by the overdue need for decolonialism. Of course, much of this seems to be the preoccupation of the most elite and resourced of such institutions. At face value, it does not seem like the likes of WUSU have onboarded this project. You mentioned the unintended paradigm of having political literature available to UNITRA, and you highlighted decline of the school after political pressure. Is there any distinct period that you can say this literature was interrupted? Because this would make for an interesting account on the intellectual legacy of UNITRA and probably warrants a study into the now seemingly subdued stature and historical legacy of the school.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Well, UNITRA was from the very onset considered a rural university. A university that was established by a government that was made of traditional leaders, obviously collaborating with the apartheid system for whatever reason. And at the same time, an institution that was built by people who valued education. I think that was partly the reason Matanzima allowed freedom of expression and academic freedom to take root at that university at the time. But I was not familiar with the regime's machinations, but I suspect that pressure must have been brought to bear on his government that those types of activities must not be allowed to continue, because they spread also into the city of Mthatha. Every weekend we had parties, and these parties were held in the residences of these lecturers who came from outside of the Transkei. And a lot of what was happening, more than dancing and drinking and everything else, was political discussions, that were there. We heard about Karl Marx, not only in the classes, but also in the homes of Professor Vilakazi. Professor Vilakazi was again the kind of person I would say would want to bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. He was a professor, but he was very much committed to the preservation of our African values as a people, even in the era of democracy and modernity. So I'm not sure as to what must have happened to the resources in the form of books that were in the UNITRA library. But I imagine that they should be there. But if they are not there, someone might be persuaded to try and get them up. Though, of course, they must be generally available now. Now, once a person has been removed from a position of leadership and authority by those who are holding bigger authority than him, the one that follows then tends to be intimidated. And I imagine, therefore, those who succeeded the leadership of that time and the lecturers, naturally, in order to preserve themselves and also to earn a living for themselves and their families, might have toned down the level of intensity in the imparting of the kind of information that was needed. But you can see from some of the people in the private and public sector that are products of the University of Transkei, that at least in spite of the circumstances under which UNITRA was born, we were able to reap the fruit of that limited freedom that we had. Auditors general, judges in the Constitutional Court, Supreme Court, and every other court in the legal profession, doctors, engineers, accountants, many of them have sustained the new government of South Africa, having been bred at UNITRA. So I think people who are academically inclined or involved must do something to ensure that the school is revived. Those of us in government must always ensure that when the university needs resources, it must not be regarded as a second-class type of institution, but must be given the resources that it deserves. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Comrade Patigile, and also thanks, Comrade Malbongwe, for sharing with us your experiences and your thoughts about Comrade Bura. Let's now move to Comrade Melanie. Earlier, we heard from Sis Patiswa that Comrade Bura worked for a Cape Town-based organization. I'm assuming that's the Healthcare Trust. The floor is yours, Comrade Melanie.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to, no, I'm unmuted. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at the 35th anniversary of the tragic assassination of Bathandwa. Yeah, I met Bathandwa before he started working for Healthcare Trust, obviously, because I was working there at first. I first came to Tyler in 1983. And just for those who do not know Healthcare Trust, it was an organization set up to look at health from an alternative view, influenced by a big conference on primary health care, which looked at health as broader than health services, but that more important were the social determinants of health, the economy, the food, the water, the sanitation, housing, and all other aspects that either cause ill health or good health. And it started off with Dr. Sophie Kisting and Dr. Welile Shasha, who was at the hospital as superintendent. And they trained, influenced by the Chinese barefoot doctors. Village health workers were introduced, and mainly in Manzimashle village. And when I first came in 1983 to Tyler, the first visit there, Batandwa was home from UNITRA, and it was the first time that I met him. And we used to get into very intense conversations about patriarchy and feminism. And I was most impressed because he had a very progressive view towards feminism. And then by 1985, Healthcare Trust policy was that we need to hand over the project to local people and that we needed a local coordinator. Now, Batandwa at that time, as everyone knows, had been expelled from UNITRA, and he'd already shown a lot of interest in, oh, okay, to put my video on, I didn't want to. Okay, I think my video's on now. So he had shown a lot of interest in the work that we were doing in the villages, to the extent that he came on some visits with us. And the picture you see of Batandwa was taken in Manzimashle village. And he was really, yes, so by 85, when we were looking for a local coordinator, Batandwa applied amongst others, and he was definitely the most suitable candidate for the job. So he took over from me, and I left to work in Wits Rural Project in what was then Garankuwa, which is now, I think, part of Mpumalanga. And by the time Batandwa took over, one of the big cries since the project started was for water, that you could not sustain anything healthy without water to grow gardens, to keep clean, to have to drink, all of those things. And so we had a relationship with the Environmental Development Agency in Joburg and visited them in Stadspruit, where they had started spring protection. And that's where we learned about the spring protection and brought it to Manzimahle. By the time Bathandwa took over, we were already working with spring protection in Mne and Upper and Lower Lafuta. And so basically he then led those projects together with Sis Beatrice, who'd been there for quite a long time. One of the things when I left to work in the WITS project, he used to write letters to me. Now, youngsters these days will not understand that we didn't have WhatsApp and we didn't have email. So we used to write letters that were posted through the post box and have long discussions. And one of the, I think, things that Bathandwa was really trying to do was involve more youth in the projects in the villages. And he also addressed youth in different villages about health, about the social determinants of health, and the importance of them getting involved in village activities as well. So it was a very, it was short-lived, his 3 or 4 months with Healthcare Trust. But had he carried on, I think we would have had a lot of youth organized in villages. And such a tragedy that that could not have happened. Just a few other stories, to do the job, he had to drive. So I remember starting off teaching him to drive on the rugby field in Kala and later within the village. And when I was trying to teach him how to use the clutch on a little hill, he kept slipping backwards. And after about 10 minutes, we had a whole lot of youth running to the car to help push it up the hill. And we had to explain that I was just trying to teach him to do his clutch balance. I think one of my regrets was early September of 1985. He wrote and asked if I could not come to Cape Town to when he gave his first report there. And I felt I couldn't ask a new job if I could leave to go down for an old job that I had. And I have today, since then, regretted that I didn't take that chance and go to Cape Town. A few other things to mention, that although he was expelled from UNITRA, he still had meetings there. I'm sure some from UNITRA would know that, because sometimes I had to smuggle him in under a blanket, driving through UNITRA security. I can add, after Lungisile or whoever has spoken, about the time between his death and the funeral, when Lungisile and Dumisa and others were detained and banished, and Nondomiso and I were left in the house to organize the funeral with the help of some other outsiders. But I will leave that now. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Comrade Melanie, for sharing with us. Anyone want to comment, comrades, about that part of the history of Comrade Batix It's interesting that Batex was involved around water issues. Sakisizwe continue to face those problems, and hopefully the youth of today will take up the challenge to try and resolve that problem. Do we have any comments, comrades, on this part? Anything from the chats, Comrade Lwazi?
Okay. There is a comment, and so I'm not sure whether we start with the comment.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a highly commendable event. I really want to express my deeply felt sense of appreciation and gratitude for keeping the name of Bathandwa alive, lest we forget where we come from and how we have ended up in the horrendous situation we find ourselves in. The name of Bathandwa and many other young people who lost their lives fighting against a cruel and inhuman regime must always be kept alive for the youth of today to learn that they have a duty of social advocacy against the excesses of our current government and social injustices, humiliation, and disempowerment. Yeah, so that's the comment.
Okay. I think on that note, Comrade Lwazi, we are moving to the other session, and that session is led by Comrade Prof and also Comrade Advocate Nsebeza. They will share with us what happened on the 24th of September and its aftermath. And the Comrade Advocate will also comment around issues that relate to the TRC. Earlier on, this is just for Comrade Advocate, in case he missed the comment that was made by Pumes or Lupuana, where he has this question, where he is wondering whether those medals, where they are and whether they appeared at the TRC. He also posed the question whether the family did ever consider of a commissioner of inquiry so that the murderers could be prosecuted. I'm just raising this so that when you get your time, Advocate, to speak, you also begin to address that comment that we got earlier on. Comrade Prof, floor is yours.
Okay. Yabulela hlala phambili and ibulela nezithethe and Baumgebe Ngosu Olomisa. I'm really delighted that you put aside time and be part now of this event. But it is so that you knew Batandwa, and from UNITRA, I know your university days to be the University of Natal. I've associated you with UNITRA. Now, I've been asked to talk about the day, today, 35 years ago, the day Batandwa was murdered. I would like to comment, raise two comments, broad comments that I think are important for those of us who are living, especially young people. But the first one is about how people develop and the various sources that people draw from. There's a tendency, especially in our democratic era, to create the impression that an individual is made and molded by one formation. And in politics, there's a tendency for people not to claim that so-and-so was our person and nothing else. But when you listen to the story of Bathandwa today, as related by the people with it is very clear that Bathandwa drew from a number of sources. And I'm sure there are more that we are not aware of. I've noted here, as people were talking, that there is something to be said about the role of UNITRA in the making of Bathandwa. What was happening there, and I can attest to that, because I used to visit people like Herbert Vilagazi and other lecturers, Willem Landman, who was in the philosophy department, who actually wanted me to go and teach there. But the powers that be at the time wouldn't allow me to go and teach there. And so I knew I know what was happening at UNITRA at that time, and the dynamism in that institution, the lecturers across sort of disciplines, English, politics, philosophy, sociology, where Vilagazi was. So that's one source that Bathandwa used. And there's also the question of student politics. He learned a lot from his involvement in student politics. There's the underground and that was involved in. And but also there's the Gala, the stories that we hear from Umelani Alpestan, his work with the Healthcare Trust, the people he interacted with in that context and so on. And then of course there's the home environment where he grew up and where he stayed in until he died. Stayed at our house. They stayed with Bathandwa from 1981 when he came out of prison until he died. Literally, the day he died. So, and in our home environment, as I said, there's a culture of reading, tight discipline, and discussion, and so on. And I ran the bookshop, and I used the bookshop to get books that wouldn't otherwise be available in South Africa. Some of the books were banned in South Africa, but were not banned in Transkei. And although I was against the independence of Transkei or any Bantustan, I recognized the independence of Transkei for purposes of getting books and selling books that were banned in South Africa, but not in Transkei. So that's one point that I want to raise about Bathandwa and the importance, the significance of Bathandwa for us today. The second one is the question of the tensions across generations. I was struck when we had a meeting, CALUSA meeting, one of our seminars about a couple of years ago, when we're talking about the role of youth in development. I was struck by the attitude of elderly people, men and women, and their attitude towards the youth. And the common thread was that abantwana abanambeko, abantwana abasihloniphi, abantwana bethu sibancamile abasimameli. That went through, and it was 2 days of a workshop, and that was the theme. But I think that young people and old people can draw a lot from Bathandwa. Bathandwa worked comfortably with elderly people. The Healthcare Trust that Melanie talked about was made up of what we used to call village health workers when the project started. I think these days they would be called health care workers. And these were elderly people, Omamuma, Jaja, and so on in Manzimahle, Onokariot. Those were elderly people. And Batandwa at the time was about 21, 22 years. And he worked comfortably with them. And you know, he, as Nkosi Olomisna was saying, he was an ordinary person, a humble person, related, identified with the people who brought him up. And so this Batandwa can help us today bridge the gulf that exists between young people and elderly people. And I hope this is something that we can discuss in during question and comments session, but also not beyond this, in trying not to reconstruct, an active youth youth activism these days. Now, to my point, I mean, the issue is supposed to talk about, the death of Bathandwa. And a lot has been said and a lot has been written. We are holding these events every year, and each year we talk about the circumstances surrounding Bathandwa's death. So I'm not going to say much about that. I can also refer people to work that has been written. That's the advantage now, that some of this has been written. There is the book that was written by Terry Bell with my brother, Advocate Nsebeza, The Unfinished Business. And there's a chapter there called the CALUSA Connection. And that chapter covers quite extensively sort of what was happening in CALUSA and the killing of Bathandwa and so on. And there's a lot of newspaper, there was a lot of newspaper reportage those days. And I sort of compiled, and I think Melanie has clips, newspaper cuttings of those events. So those who are interested in getting the full detail of what happened then and so on, are invited to look at this documentation. There's also the website of CALUSA, where some of these documents are. But very briefly, Bathandwa was murdered.
Comrade Prof?
Yes.
Sorry, man, can I disrupt you a bit?
Yes.
I've just been told that Prati is about to take a flight, so he needed to come in now before that.
Okay. Okay.
Can we allow him to come in and share his thoughts?
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Okay, sure. Prati, floor is yours.
Chairperson, are you sure he's not pulling rank?
I don't think so.
Bullish.
Umthetho wakhe ke lo. Umthetho wakho ke lo.
I'm frightfully sorry. I've got to be boarding within the next 5 minutes. Dilizindaba, ndiyabulela uba ndikufumane ukhona apha nawe Dilizindaba lo mcimbi kaBathandwa, kuba iye yandikhumbuza into owawukwenye into ebunje, kuxoxwa ke ngezinto yinto ekhona nofeleba ukumkani. Kuthi ke kuloo nto kusathethwa kubekho umuntu ofonayo efonela apha esitishini esithi kutheni uDilizindaba kunye noMathanzima, uMathanzima lo wabulela uNdondo. Awuthi ke ufeleba xa ephendulayo lawufika ixesha lakhe athi uyabona ke injena into xa ungumntu omkhulu, kuba xa ungumntu omkhulu zonke into uyiselwa apha kuwe. Uba imvula yini ngumathanzini, abafazi abangazaliyo ngumathanzini. Thetha ukuthi ke yeyivuyela le nto bacaba le nto kaBathandwa Dingizintaba usoloko uhleli nayo kuthi. Kuthiwe ke ethi nje indawo zibe mbalwa ezininzi ebendizawuthetha ngazo zezi umninawe selefikele kuzo. Nale ke yokubana kukho le ncwadi into naye seyi-out of print ngoku, laa ncwadi kuthiwa ngu-Unfinished Business. Ine-chapter nje eyodwa ethi The Killing of Bathandwa Ndondo, over and above le umninawe ebesithi ilo chapter kuthiwa nguCala Connection. Ndingene ke ndamuva noMelani wabetha indawo endizaziyo. Into ebendiqonda uba ke mandiweze uluntu kuyo yile ye-TRC. Abantu be-TRC, abantu ababebulelwe uBathandwa baye beza ngaphambili. Yayiziaskari ezimbini okanye ezintathu ezafuna i-amnesty. Kunjanje yayilapha eMthatha loo nto, yayimanyelwe apho le hearing, amnesty committee hearing. Two of those askaris got, I think 2 or 3 of them, they got the amnesty because the amnesty committee felt that they had made a full disclosure of all the facts related to the act of killing Bathandwa, in relation to which they were applying for amnesty. And the amnesty committee, having felt that they had met the criteria, especially the criterion of making a full disclosure, it granted them amnesty. The one person that never failed to get, that did not succeed in getting amnesty was a security policeman who was in the Transkei Security Police at the time, Batandwa. And he's one of the people who executed Bathandwa and killed him in the manner in which we all know now, because over the years, Tasmane sipinda lento kaBathandwa njengebe sitsho umninawe iyavela lento indlela awabulawa ngayo uBathandwa, abulawa ongathi yinja njengowaba watsho la mama wafela ezinyaweni zakhe lo mama kuba wawa estupini apho lo mama wayehlele khona. Edutyulwa ke ngoDandala aba. UDandala ke yena ngenxa into yobana angazange afumane amnesty, ndikwiphulo ngoku lokubana makatshutshiswe, kangangokubana uMhaka wayefuna ukumtshutshisa. uMhaka ke ngomnye umfana obeyiprosecutor eMthatha, waphumelela kunjawunje ukuba aprosecute uGumengu noTyani, abantu ababebulele uSithembele Zokwe, bembulala ukwenza naye kokwabo, beminxanisele uRontaule, bamdubula ongathi abakholela ubana angafa xa bemdubule ngembumbulwenye nge-AK-47, bamdubula wangakwazi ukuba umntu amazi uba ngulo ibinguSithembele Zokwe, indlela bamdubula ngayo kakubi. Now uMhaka ke ngeli xesha ebesengumtshutshisi uye waphumelela ukuba abatshutshise uGumengu noTyani kunjawunje ke, kodwa ndiyabona inoba sebephumle ngoku, kodwa bagwetya 20 years kuloo nto. So ke bendikhe ndathetha naye, ikhona i-organization ekuthiwa yi-Foundation for Human Rights endithe kuyo funeke siyilandele into yokutshutshiswa kaDandala kuba yena akazange ayifumane i-amnesty. Akazange ayifumane i-amnesty ngenxa into yobana i-amnesty committee yagqiba kwelokubana akathethanga nyani ugwengule phezulu. Nofeleba ke phofu ke ude utshona kufeleba naye ubungqina bakhe kuloo komiti wayevele kuyo zange bude bugqibe kuba kwabakho into ethi noko umntu seleluphele kwaye ke ayivakali into ayithethayo. Ndithetha uthi ke kukangako ke kwicala lokubana imeko imi ndawoni na. I-TRC yenye ke yabantu esikwakuthiwe mabatshutshiswe aba sisitsho kwi-National Prosecuting Authority. And one of the recommendations esazenzile yile ke ngokusivuselelayo thina sikwi-Foundation for Human Rights. Andazi ke ibiyawuzala nkomoni na, kodwa njengoba sesidibene ngolu hlobo ndifuna into yokubana nimane nindikhumbuza nisithi ime ndawoni na into yokutshutshiswa kukaDandala. Sendikhwetywa ke zinkosi, andazi noba andinawuthi lelona xesha ke emandibaleke kulo lo. Intliziyo yam iligazi kuba imandi le nto bendibanda bendikhona kodwa ke into azivumanga ngolo hlobo. Ndiyabulela mhlali ngaphambili.
Siyabulela nathi brati. Kuba ke sowubizwa kuziba kothuba loba abantu bangakubuza nto kodwa ke bavumelekile ba bawuzibeka i-comments and hopefully zawuphenduleka ethubeni. Siyabulela.
Thank you.
Let's go back to Comrade Prof.
Emhlala phambili ndibona ngathi kwesandla sikaMeya Mfengu.
Okay.
Ungenamthuba khe sivuthini okanye into endinoyiphendula nam leyo.
Iza Meya iza andisibonanga. Meya, unmute yourself.
Mandibhotise ebandleni ngumeya lo.
Aha.
Ndiyavakala kakuhle mhlekazi.
Uvakala kakuhle ba.
Okay. Isandla sam ndisiphakamise earlier, I think when Unkosi Olomisa was talking about the days with Umfi whilst they were still students at UNITRA. What I had in mind back then was into yokuba there was a period, I think early in September, that probably was triggered by the commemoration eyayisenziwa kaBawubiko on the 12th of September that year, 1985. I was a student at Cala High then, we were sitting for trial exams because it was September. And we were disrupted by students who basically went out into the grounds and started a peaceful protest. But so there is a gentleman since I was at 9 that year by the name of Ubongani Bunyonyo. Most of you might know him. He's now late. Whenever a commemoration Mr. Ndondo came, we would chat about events and what we recalled as learners back then. Yeah, his viewpoint, Ubongani Bunyonyo, was that into 24th of September, probably in his mind as a student then, who was involved with politics at Cala High, but early junior lane nina Mr. Ncapayi, wena Mr. Khali, no Beji Dentlanjini, no Ndodana, Ondota Khatana, and a few other student leaders at the time. As no, there was a peaceful protest that was arranged not a protest, but a commemoration service that was arranged for Ubiko on the 12th. But that was disrupted. The academic program was disrupted. And then there were other events and things that happened in the background that culminated in the killing of Bathandwa Ndondo 12 days later. So in my mind, there's always been that gap, that missing link, trying to understand kubantu babezi student leaders high, like Nina ke Mr. Khali. You knew better, you understood this better than us. Naga was not an activist, so I didn't even know nothing. I knew about Mr. Slick school, Mr. Nkabile school, and those are the people about Kuchwaya, like we administration that very month and got punishment orders along with the Nsebeza brothers. And when this out here, now that Ukona now Mr. Khali, and I hope most Ukona no Mr. Ngapai Otto. Shambi, from what you knew, Nina, as student leaders at the time, Shambi, you can give us a better view of what could have happened between the commemoration that was planned for Ubigo on the 12th and the events on the 24th, because that seems to be missing in most of the chats that we and the talks that we keep hearing in today's webinar. That's all, Mflekas.
Okay, I want to note what Comrade Mayor just raised. I see you, Luvuyo, and I don't want us to be going back to that discussion. Comrade Luvuyo, would you mind if you put your comments in the chat, and maybe we allow Prof to proceed, and hopefully when we open up for discussions, we can come back to some of these questions. Is that fine with you, comrades?
I'm fine.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Prof, over to you then.
Okay, Nkosi Tangapambi. In fact, as the comment here Zwangu Mayor, and I'm sure Ulvuyo Guy and I will commenter, about events Orlando is something I thought I would raise in talking about the events leading to the death of Bathandwa. That it's important for people to understand what was happening in the mid-80s. South Africa and Ecala in particular. Ukumla kwango 84, late or 84, late student activism unit and Oxotwa Bathandwa. And so he came to Ecala. And Ecala, I suppose the literature that the books that were selling a bookshop, they were beginning to attract the attention of the security police. And kwagumane bakhona raids by a bookshop. And demanded bizwa amapolice security police. Bebuza ngezincwadi. In some cases, was confiscated as not. And but throughout, I was very clear, Kubo, in Doba, look, I'm selling books, and I used to, even a good correspondence, and I used to remind them of, what Socrates said, the Greek philosopher, that an informed citizen is better than an uninformed citizen. And he said, look, they are there not to help people understand izinto zabo and what's important, these books are not banned. Tiboniseni a list of banned books in Transkei. And I had done my homework, and homework told me that there were two items, documents that were banned at Transkei at the time. It was a book that was written by Barry Strick and another journalist, A.T. Renda and Ukeza. And it was on independence at Transkei in 1976 and so on. And then there was a pamphlet, ANC, a speech that was delivered by Oliver Tambo. I think it was birthday ANC in 1977, where he obviously commented about Transkei independence or non-independence, which occurred in October of the previous year, 1976. So, and I suppose Ufele at the time felt that because those two pieces were attacking him directly, why what must banish? Other than that, doesn't banish is not. And I made it a point, a bookshop, that we don't sell these books or these documents, this book and the pamphlet. And we sold other material. I mean, even Karl Marx, we had volumes of Karl Marx selected works, Lenin selected works, and so that were selling. They were not banned, and I sold them because they were not banned. But our police again, were sort of sensitive to this, and raided the bookshop, took some of my books, but then when they could not prove that the books were not banned, I asked them to return the books. They returned the books, and I remember on one occasion, I think about two that it damaged, and I sent them an invoice that again is Moshile's Nwadezi. I'm selling books. Here's an invoice, and to my surprise, they paid. So that was happening 84, and then it was an intensifier in 1985. 1985, people will remember that even before Kube Kona, this students, protests, which was later in the year, mid-1985, Kwakuko, consumer boycotts and so on were the order of the day. And Itala, Transkei was not directly affected. But, as a result of those uprisings, Kwabanjwa Abantu, and one of the major events of the time was the murder of Matthew Goniwe and his comrades, Craddock, the so-called Craddock 4 episode. Now, Matthew, people will know, was a close comrade. We were together in the same trial, in 1976, and Ukujwa Wetetrongweni, Bambenisha Transkei, Basbenisha Tina, and then they kicked him out of Transkei. And but we kept on visiting each other, Matthew and so on. So Bathandwa was aware of the link that we had with Matthew. And Matthew was killed in June, end of June. And this is something that we always talked about, Ekhaya, with Bathandwa there, or Victor Ngaleka, and the group that used to come together in our study groups. So that was the environment at the time. But Bathandwa, we knew, we all knew that we're doing all sorts of things. As Umelani said, Bathandwa was continued his involvement with students, Osland, Ambalu, and so on. They were his colleagues, they were working together. And one of his friends, important in talking about the events of the 24th. One of the friends, Bathandwa at the time, was a guy called Utobile Bam. I think they were together at UNITRA, expelled, and then continued with their underground work. Utobile came to our place on the 23rd of September as a Bathandwa. And it was normal. They used to come to our place, or Slendambalu. They used to come and you know, to discuss, and they would have their own discussions. And on this day, ubutobile uyafika and ncokole, and then they go to bed, but so lala. And the following day, they were supposed to go to Queenstown to service the car that Bathandwa was using. I think it was a Golf that he had been given by my brother. It was used by my brother. And so Sivuk on the 24th, ndibashiye ekhaya, ndiye bookshop, ndovule bookshop, and on that day ndandizayobhankisha. Sasingenabhanki ecala, as people know. There was an agency, a bank, Standard Bank, Barclays Bank. Barclays Bank came from Ingcobo, and then Tina Suspension Standard Bank and branch here to Elliot. So on that day in the morning, I went to Elliot to do my banking. And ndibashiye uBathandwa noPhotobile endlini. I remember ndisitsho besithi hey madoda ndiselapha, i-service yonini yale moto, i-Queenstown is not around the corner. But I no, sisawamba. So I left them. It must have been about 8 o'clock. And what I can also say with hindsight is that Puma apecana on my way to Elliot, I remember seeing a combi, this minibus. Engena abakule branch yasemgwanane, those of you who know Cala, mna ndiyonyuka bona beza apha ngase-town. Tinted glasses, white combi, XS 1885 or 1886. And it struck me as I was driving in Oba, hey, whose car is this? And Itala, small town, you get to know who's driving which car and so on. That was one thing. But the other thing is that we had a similar car for the bookshop, a panel van, a VW. Now, XS 18 is either 1885 and this one was 1886, or the other way around. But throughout Uyagwame Elliot and I'm asking my question, but I wonder if the car. Umntu wayenemali ke at the time yangutata okuthiwa nguGiyos enevengile kwathini. And my mind immediately thought, no, maybe Giyos uthenge enye imoto because he used to buy cars and so on as friends. Now, Elliot, when I came back from Elliot, ndathi nxa ndidlula kule ndawo kuthiwa iNdondo House, which is quite a shame into yoba ilaa ndawo lena yazange ilungiswe yenziwe i-heritage site. But I mean, that was the place. Now, Indondo House, and figure park, kukhona a number of people abakhoyo. I think that time then was about 11 or so. Yeah, but kwakusasa. Kwabantu abakhoyo apha lanto, and ukhona lo mntu lanto who's desperate, ongathi uyandimisa, but mna ndingxamile, kukho into endingxamileyo ebookshop. And then nxa ndisingena ndisiza apha semapoliseni ndidibane noVictor Ngaleka. Driving the car, uBathandwa beyisebenzisa. And then andimisa uVictor. Sime uVictor athi, hey, besisiya sisuka ngasesibhedlela. And yintoni uthi kukhona abantu abafike phaya ezantsi. Nakuthi uThobile ngokuVictor noThobile. Uthole kufike kukhona abantu abafike phaya ezantsi and i-suspects bangamapolisa. Bathi bafuna uBathandwa ababonise into ethile. I don't know, I don't remember the details. But the long and short of it is that for whatever reason, Bathandwa decided to accompany these people, bahamba nabo. And then uThobile was worried, walandela, wayecho kuVictor, wathi mabalandele lamapolisa. I mean, le moto. And but nxa bengena edorophini, according to them, bayibona le moto isiya ngasesibhedlela. xa yangasesibhedlele bayilandela and uVictor uthi wafika kukhona umfundisi school and onegazi kwishirt yakhe and uthi kule moto uyabona kukho igazi ngaphakathi and uthi ababuze uba yema sifuna ubathanda and behambe ngale moto and lo mfo lona uthi waphendula apha wathi I know look sezandleni zamapolisa and useVic uthi wabona indlela njena lo mfo amjonga ngayo into yoba hey if he continues asking questions lo mfo lona uzambamba wathini so bajika and ngeli xesha bajika badibana na. So we went to the bookshop sizama ucinga lento lena into yoba inokwenzeke ntoni and at the bookshop sisahleli sicinga ngale nto kwafika umzalwana utata uBhulwana think wayikwakuksi ngelo xesha ezibhasini uBhulwana abuze hey uphi le ntwana yakokwenu ke thina hayi no usekhaya zama uba vague kuphenduleni but hey ndimbonile lo mfana lona dutyulwa amapolisa ngapha ezantsi and ngeli xesha phaa lanto sathetha loo nto uBhulwana kufike uNceba Mbulawo lo weteksi apha ecala and uNceba naye athi hey le ntwana yakweli le inenwele ezinde ibidutyulwa phaa amapolisa I don't think izawusinda that I mean izawuphila. So soon thereafter no ekubeni bethethe le nto lena took imoto ndotsho kule ndawo ukuthi ubulewe kuyo apho ndiye ndafumana khona ke ii-details kumama wakwaTunes owayichazayo le nto lena uba babone imoto emhlophe isihla iphumile ngase-Elliot bathi besayijongile le moto lena babona uba ukhona lo mntu uphuma ngefestire and estraglisha and bamisa lo mntu waphuma wabaleka wajikela endlini nxa siza apha ngaphambili ngoba wayefuna ungena apha emnyango they started shooting bamdubula and bamdubula nangokusephantsi kanti babathathu amadoda kukho nomntu ongumama right. I mean it's a long story I don't want to get to it detail. What I want to say is that after kwenzeke loo nto leyo ndayotsho emapoliseni reporter into yoba usikhangela umninawo wam and kuthiwe besemapoliseni and sizoripota amapolisa athi ubukhona ndithi no bendingekho athi ayizukuphinduza. And then after that no I went to the hospital. Unfortunately esibhedlele babendazi ke abantu baphaya sister and so on and owenza inquiries ba hey ubathanda ukuthi lapho bavuma bathi hayi no ukhona and bathi mandiye upstairs esweke apha esibhedlele no sister I think yangu sister Ndabula and then xa sifika phaa usister Ndabula avula umnyango xa ndithi kulo mnyango lona nangu bathanda ulele phaya on his back and ubotshelelwe apha entloko bona ke ungakwazi ukhamisa and so on he was dead and emguqula apha no amahlwili and so I mean yeah it was confirmed I confident ndayibona ngokwami into yoba no look this guy is dead. The next thing, of course, now I had to imagine basawuthini na. So I went back emapoliseni and I reporter ngokuba no look no ubhubhile lo mntu lona and dear reporter I want to know uba ngubani obhubhileyo. And again ipolice elalikhona I think yanguJali or something. uJali told me into yokuba no basebusy but and I decided to go to friends Godfrey Slinger, uMelxolo wayitisha ecala high, just to tell them this story. Doctor was a doctor then, Professor Mfenyana, I went to him and I told him, and the reasoning about whatever would happen to me, because I was not sure whether they were not going to come back, Basbulale and so on. I thought that before yenzeke loo nto lena, as many people abakhoyo ecala should know what had happened. So after ndiyenze loo nto lena, I went back to emapoliseni, and xa ndifika phaa ndifika le lieutenant yayi-head ye-security, police, I think engujali, yeah. Ndifika engqiyame countering with the back facing me, ethetha efowunini, and then ndime ke mna ke kuba ndibona uba andifuni uba ndimdisturb. Ekuthetheni kwayo ndibona uba inokuthetha nomntu mane ethetha ngomajor, major eMthatha. And in talking, ndibona uba kuthethwa le nto kaBathandwa, and one of the things that he said, and ayibambayo, into yoba uMose, or at the time ndandicinga nguMose, uMose uye wavuma into yokuba udubule. You see. And ngelo xesha amapolisa ayephaya ayindibona uba ndikhona, I-intervene athi, hey, Lieutenant, ukhona lo uNtsebeza, better attend yena, because they could see that I was listening. And then yanke wayidropa ke le phone le lieutenant, wanise ofisini yakhe, wathi hayi sithetha ngale case yakho yalo nina wakho, and siyayivuma into yokuba ubulewe nina wakhe, and he has been shot by the police. So after that, ndemka, and I knew then that, look, I now pin and buya. Oh, what's in buya ngofo? I knew then that I wouldn't come back. And now, to cut a long story short, because I mean, there's detail after that, is that armed now with this knowledge in ubulewe ngamapolisa, and I had this name of Umos. I phoned, I went to Queenstown, Esbeleni, apho brother wam kwaye ligqwetha under ifem yakwaSangula. And ndamxelela ngale nto, and there we had better facilities for ufona, because apha ecala kwakukho laa system indala kwakufanele uba ufone through the exchange, and then exchange ikuse ndawo yakuyo. And we knew sasingabathembi abantu be-exchange uba sasicima laa nto bayasetyenziswa amapolisa. So I decided to go to Esbeleni, and from Esbeleni we started phoning a range of people, abantu baseKapa, Melani, and journalists, and umntu owasincedileyo. And each time I think about him and I see him, yayingumfo kwakuthiwa Franz Kruger. Franz Kruger wayesebenza kwi-Daily Dispatch, and he was also working for a radio station ekuthiwa iCapital Radio. And iCapital Radio yayiba neendaba every hour. They were broadcasting from Port St. John's. And Franz, we told him uba kwenzeke ntoni, the information that I had uba kwenzeke ntoni na. The next hour, I think it's 3 or 4, the whole thing was in the news. And then, of course, journalists, local, foreign, and so on, they phoned us. That day, 24th, until the early hours of the morning, I was on the phone all the time talking about Bathandwa, such that the following day, the murder of Bathandwa, and the other thing is significant. I mean, it's a very long story. The story that I'm beginning to document, fortunately, is that we knew in Obubulwe Amapolisa there was the Itobangumos, but we didn't have the full detail. Now, part of what we did in sort of talking to people, sizamba lendo ba ibe as widespread as possible, into basaya eMthatha kuTatu Square, or Ezra Square. I think this takes pain, he's getting old. I hope that ukhona umuntu interviewer because there's a note, there's a lot that latata ayaziyo. Ngiyayiqonda ngela xesha. Wayesebenza kwinto okuthiwa yi-Transkei Council of Churches, uTata Square. And so saya kuye, and wayesebenza nabo noBathandwa, kwi-underground, sort of, structures. Saya kuye sitsho sithi, hey man, look, Xamel, this is what has happened, ubhubhile lo mfo lona, these are the circumstances, and ndamenshina le nto ndiyive ngamapolisa. And Umos, he immediately jumped up, wathi, hayi, ayingomos lo, ngumose, usilulami mose. That's how you watch it. What usilulami mose, and usilulami mose, li askari. Right. And then sayithatha loo nto lena sayisa kuFrans Kruger, uFrans Kruger wafonela ipolisi elaliphethe uKawe, wathi kuthiwa kwenzeke le nto lena. And uKawe wasinceda, he admitted into yoba no, siyayazi laa nto yasecalwa, and we know that amapolisa were involved and we have taken statements. So in a way, I mean, I can go on for hours and hours. In a way, this is how Bathandwa met his death, and the investigations we did, and within literally 12 hours, we knew uba ubulewe ngubani, and amapolisa had admitted, and loo nto lena yababeka kwi-position where they couldn't later say that no, we don't know who murdered Bathandwa. And I contrasted this with the experience, which was recent then, very fresh, here kaGoniwe, where amapolisa claimed that abamazi into bayazi ba i-Craddock 4 aba bantu babulewe but uBathandwa, we were fortunate to know who murdered uBathandwa. And I think umkhulu wasethethile ke ngoku ngento yoba kwenzeka ntoni emveni koko and TRC. I think I should stop there and rather field questions if abantu banayo. Oh yes, no, I see ukhona umuntu apha esithi elipolisa layingojali yayingujilili. Yeah, that's true. Yayingujilili lo wayehedisha i-security police apha ecala. So, Mvulana, I think man, stop up, man, and then if Google questions, I can field questions. This is a very long story, and yeah, it's going to be written. It's being written.
Okay, Masbulele, Prof. Just before questions, I know that Comrade Melanie said she would add a few points about what happened also. Can I give it to you, Comrade Melanie, before I give for questions?
Okay. Yeah, I got the phone call to tell me about Bathandwa's murder when I was up in Mpumalanga, and immediately I told them that I must pack and go to Tyler, which I did. And I arrived, I think sometime, I don't know, the next day or something. And I think Lungisile wasn't there at that time. And it was Nondomiso, Victor, myself, and, oh, now I've forgotten his name. It will come back to me, in the house. And yeah, we kept getting threats at the house, and a few nights later, we were woken up with lots of banging on the doors and weren't sure whether we should open the doors or not. And Victor in the end opened the door. And yeah, it was Viwe Grete, thank you very much. Opened the door, and immediately in came a whole lot of men. They didn't look like police at all. Yeah, and then they took Victor away and left Nondomiso and I. And we were very worried, 2 women left behind, what was going to happen. So as soon as the curfew time was over at 5, we went to tell, names are just my age and names are leaving me. We went to tell some people they'd been, Melukolo and others, they had been picked up in the night. And then we found Kayam Fenyana, the doctor, and we said, we're going to Elliot, and we're going to let people know what's been happening. So Franz Kruger was one of the people that we phoned, as well as others in Elliot. But obviously the Elliot Exchange was listening. So on the way back, we were followed, and then they stopped us and asked where we were going. We said we're going to Kala, and they looked at the license. I don't know who they were, but they let us carry on. And yeah, so the whole time between then and the funeral, Nondomiso and I were trying to make arrangements for the catering, for everything. And the night before the funeral, luckily people arrived from Cape Town, the Healthcare Trust people and others. So they helped us with all the arrangements. But as you know, the next day before the funeral could happen, the security police arrived. They'd already chased children into the hills. They'd arrested people. Those of us from Cape Town, we had to pack and leave, and they escorted us all the way to the Queenstown border. Yeah, so that was the time period between his murder and when the funeral was to take place. So yeah, others could fill in about the funeral because obviously we were not there. But it was a very, very tense time. And yeah, I'm Mlungisile, I can't remember, you will know. Did you come back in that time at all, or were you and Demisa banished the whole time? I cannot remember all the details somehow or other, 35 years later. But it was a very, very tense time between then and the funeral. And we know of, yeah, all the people that were arrested and all the buses that were stopped coming to the funeral as well. So that's the part I wanted to add.
Thanks, Comrade Melanie. Comrades, it's now open for comments and questions. Any hands? Comrade Lwazi, can you pick up issues in the chat? Lwazi?
Yes, Comrade, I'm going to the chat now. One comment here, Brady, I shall definitely remind you, because it is still unacceptable such a heinous crime can be allowed to go unpunished. A man who died for an ideal, that of free and democratic South Africa, such a life of selflessness, loyal to principle. We need more Bathandwa Ndondos. Thank you for these reflections. I believe that the remembrance of the life of Bathandwa Ndondo should be an inspiration to remember more young people who lost their lives fighting for the betterment of our communities. We need more young people to make sure that their sacrifice was not in vain. We need more young people who will become advocates of betterment in their respective communities. I thank you. Sandy Stoffing. What political structures was Bathandwa associated with? PAC, BCM, and ANC, etc. I'm 100% behind the prosecution of Comrade Bathandwa's killers, Ndicela ubuza sifuna uzuza ntoni ngale webinar or meeting, because if sifuna ukuqinisekisa uba Bathandwa Ndondo umphefumlo wakhe continues to rest in peace and ababulali bagwetywe, masingamenshini amagama e-witnesses, especially aba bantu tata athi uyabazi. Ife yam kuba xa iqhubeka le case, you might lose witnesses ngoba ayabulawa amanqina. That's if the case yaqhuba. As a young person, it inspires us to know that the struggle indeed carries on. Sithathe apho amaqabane awe khona. Ndirhoxe anelesikade. Mr. Lupuana Oti, I'm of the view that Batandwa's assassination could be used to awaken and raise the consciousness of the youth of today. After all, in every generation and society, it has always been the duty of the youth to rise up and take up the pen of the people's struggles against social injustices. However, we as the older generation and parents are generally to blame for the ignorance and lackadaisical attitude of our children. We have chosen to join the red race of crass materialism and seek what we perceive as the best for our children and don't tell them the story of where we come from. We become proud when our children speak English with a European tone and cannot express themselves in the indigenous African languages and adopting white middle-class livelihoods. We are the guilty ones in this regard. Dr. Ncapai, I think people like Bambo Kongo were also associated with preparations of the funeral of Bura. That's it so far.
Okay, thanks. Are there other comrades who want to comment? I'm looking for hands before Prof can respond to some of the specific questions. Okay, can you come in? Luvuyo, unmute yourself. Is unmuted. I can't hear from this side. I don't know whether we are to.
He's still muted. He should unmute himself.
He's still on mute to corner.
Baul Vuyo, can you take another one in the meantime if you can cover that? Comments, questions?
Yes, you can talk about.
Okay. Izake.
Mandibulise kule mini yanamhlanje kubantu abakhoya. Now bendizawuthi mhlale ngaphambili mhlawumbi i-video, okay. No, bendizawuthi mhlawumbi le ngxoxo naxa sikhumbula le mbali kaBhura iyafuna into yoba sidibanise nembali yeli lizwe uba bekusenzeka ntoni ngala period. I think uProf njengoba bebonisa into yoba kwakukho imigrukuzo.
Hello.
There's someone on the floor.
Hello.
Vuyo, come to you now. There's someone on the floor.
So then city iyafuna into yoba I hope uProf documental lento mina izawuzama ubonisa lento yoba bekusenzeka ntoni kwimbali yedabi lelizwe ngelaa xesha, because I think ngexesha le period ye-insurrection apho idabi lenkululeko igushuzo ibikwilizinga eliphezulu, and I think loo nto leyo also contributed I think le nto ke ngoku i-contributed ngokucinga kwam mna kwindlela ulutsha ndizama uya nakulaa nto ibithethwa nguMalibongwe Qolo, kwindlela ulutsha lalapha eCala in particular got involved and influenced by political developments outside iTranskei. Into ebesenzeka koma-Queenstown, ezibeleni, I think the mass funerals around 1985 le proximity yazo, I think ibe negalelo nento ebangele into ba some of us siqalisa uba nemibuzo ngezinto ezenzekayo around us ngelaa xesha. Yanobe bendifuna nje ulantuka nje loo nto edisha nje loo nto.
Okay, Ngosi Otto. Vuyo, can you come in? Can you please unmute yourself there? Vuyo.
Hi.
Vuyo, the floor is yours. Vula's unmute.
Ubhura ngam unmute.
Bhura yenza njalo ke ngam unmute.
If you can.
Ebeke wa unmute at some point ngokuthetha. Comrade Vuyo.
Asibe simye.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's about.
Proceed. No, mine was just two things. One is an appreciation from Uradunja and also with their inputs today. It's reviving our spirits as a person who grew up at Kala and has been involved as a student activist on a lot of activities to the spirit of Commeration Bathandwa Ndondo. Now, the main problem and the one thing that I think it needs us to do is to look and also do things that ideally would like them to do, as for instance, involving a youth and also looking upon assisting on all unemployed graduates across the Christian and dedicate that program to Commeration Bathandwa Ndondo and Goskakul.
Gabriel. Comments before I give to comments. Can you make yourself? Thank you.
Mthetho.
Ngena Comrade Pumes.
Kaka ungandela ngqolo i-background yabona, because asiva kahle into ethethwa zizithethi apha ngenxa yelaa ngqolo i-background. Khona abadlalayo pha because ibalulekile le nto. But into ebendifuna uyithetha yinto yokokuba uyabona le nto yenzekayo kubathandwa nakwabanye abantwana ababulawayo ngelaa xesha. I don't think that, we should adopt that. But they didn't die in vain. And in fact, right now, 35 years later, we are now commemorating, the assassination of Bathandwa. And I think that this should actually be a pointer to the future. Into Batina, those of us who really care about what is happening now, consciousness, to adopt the attitude. Yabona lendo bendithetha apha yoba Tina, we are to blame for this thing because abantwana bazalwa woku umuntu uzalwa engazinto esislate esiclean ubhalwa yi-society. Into ayiyo is shaped by the society eqala ekhaya.
But now the problem is that we want to, keep them or protecting them so that bangayazi into eyayisenzeka. Yona nto ibalulekileyo ngokufumanisa uba abantwana abafuni ukuba involved kwizinto ezibulala i-society. Abantwana ngokuna bakwi-drugs, benza i-crime, yonke into njena ngenxa ye-socio-economic condition ezi uBathanda wayezama ukuzilwa, uyabona. So we need to, as the older generation also, to play that role, to actually try and, sithethe ne-youth into yoba nantsi into uBathanda awayilwela, uyabona. And they should then continue as the younger generation ukuba bafunde uBathandwa abe ngumzekelo kwabantwana beli xesha. Loo nto le ilele kuthi ke. Enkosi.
Any other comments, comrades? Before we give Prof question, comments. I don't know, Sandy Siwa, is that a hand or is that a thank you? Your line is bad, Comrade Sandy Siwa, we can't hear you.
Oh, it is a hand, Mshakazi.
Okay. Talk about the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Mna into bendithanda uyithetha bendithanda ugcwalisa kwesi sithethi sigqibosha. Njengoba ndingwalapha eChrisane ndingumntu omtsha. So ithi le nto kungona sizivayo ezi zinto. Laa nto bendisithi ingaske ezi zinto ezi zibe into eqhubekayo, ingabi into ezawuphilela apha nje kum. Iqhubeke le nto enzeka ikwazi ufikeleleka nakwabanye. Loo nto kithi idinga thina lutsha uba masiphakame. Sithathe intambo from aba babebaleka kuqala so that sikwazi into yokubana sibe that beacon of hope ebantwini abatsha. Loo nto lezasincedisa ekubeni uba siphucule ii-communities zethu, sijonge ezi zinto ezidingekayo ebesenza uComrade Bathanda, nathi sibone uba zintoni esinozenza in our communities, and ezo nto zingabi zinto nje ezizaba silent okanye ezizakwenzelwa underground, kube zizinto ezibonakalayo because we have no chance leyo ngoku. Bendifuna nje uveza lo mbono, enkosi.
Siyabulela, Comrade Sandy Siwa. Other comments? Other comments? Okay. Comrade Prof, you can come in. There were some specific questions and you can also comment on the comments. Thank you.
Okay, enkosi. I think yemibuzo ibivelile ibingokuba, why are we holding this kind of event? I think seyiphendulwe zizithethe into yokuba, first, it's important as human beings that we know about these things. As I say, I said, irresponsible policy and an informed citizen is better than an uninformed one. So knowledge is power. We know that, or we should know that. And this is one of the reasons why we think that events of this nature zibalulekile babantu basi. And okwesibini, once you know, the question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? And in this case, now, I think that there are lessons that can be drawn from telling this story. And there are two types now of lessons as no one. I mean, esinozifumana kwi-story esinjena. Esokuqala into yokuba si-understande into yokuba kwakusenzeka ntoni kaye ngelaa xesha. That broader context of the struggles of the 80s and so on, what was happening. And what can we learn, Tina namhlanje, about those struggles? What can we build on, and what can we avoid? And then okwesibini, of course, about the person uBathandwa. I think ulutsha, uBathandwa is a representative of the youth. Ibonisa ulutsha at the time, and then ithi kulutsha lanamhlanje, what can the youth of today learn from uBathandwa? In telling my story, ndiqale ngento ethi uBathandwa kum umzekelo obonisa indlela ekunoresolva ngayo le tension ikhoyo phakathi kolutsha nabantu abadala. Into yokuba just telling ezi stories kaBathandwa, how he related, interacted with elderly people, how humble he was, irrespect yakhe, but at the same time, indlela owayefundisa ngayo abantu, young as he was, because there was an educational element that was involved with the program, Healthcare Trust, and so on. So uBathandwa wayemamela abantu abadala, but at the same time, he was able to impart izinto of value to abantu abadala. And in a way, that was not distant. I think langubo, and ikhona nenye ifoto kaBathandwa, and ekufuneka siyikhangele because it's a very important photo. Apho uBathandwa afotwa efake ii-gumboots, esomba trenches for the spring protection program Healthcare Trust. So wangeyo theories njena into yokuba athethe athi yenzani le nale kuba enesithi une-certificates zesikolo. Xa efika kusetyenzwa wayefika asebenze nabo. And I think it's in that way that uBathandwa managed to gain the confidence yabantu abadala kwele ndawo besenza kuyo, especially phaya eManzi Mahle. So that, in a way, is my response to the question ebuza into yoba why are we telling these events? I mean, these stories and so on. These stories are very important for the present, both in terms of arming us as abantu about curious human beings who want to know all the time, but also in terms of what we can draw from the past for the present. And I think uBathandwa, at 22 when he died, is a good example of how we can bridge the gap between the young and the old. And then ukhona nomnye umbuzo ubuspecific into yoba politically uBathandwa ebephi. And I don't know. I really do not know. What I know is that after he passed away, and especially late 80s and mainly in the 90s, zazikhona claims, and if now manje bevela abantu, zazikhona claims ezithi hayi uBathandwa ayingumntu wethu, and wayekwi-structure sethu, and so on. And indlela endlawuphendula ngayo ke nxa abantu bethetha loo nto ndidlawuthi, was that all? Wayiphelele kweso structure senu, or yayikhona enye into ayenza? And what you normally get is that hayi ayingumntu wethu lo. And iye kulaa nto bengike ndayitsho uqala kwam kule session, into yokuba uBathandwa usibonisa into yokuba ibingumntu obwengathi hayi ndikule ndlu, and andirhaleli nokwazi into yoba kwenzeka ntoni na kwenye indlu. And ibingeyonto nje bebesithi andirhaleli nokwazi nje nokwenzeka kwenye indlu ebeba nomdla and aparticipate kwezo events. So, and I remember ngelo xesha the term eyayisetyenziswa kwii-circles zethu, of which uBathandwa was part of, was the concept ekuthiwa yi-non-sectarianism. Because nge-mid-80s we were aware into yokuba eSouth Africa kukhona many political organizations which at the time were externally based. And those of us, not all of us, those of us ababayi appreciate loo nto lena were of the view that rather than into yoba sibe sicalucalula wena ukulaa camp wena ukweyiphi na, we should try and come together and talk about the common enemy and talk about how we can topple the society and talk about the possibilities of us working together as political organizations. I mean, irrespective of our political orientation. And my sense is that, Bathandwa Ndondo sort of belonged to that camp. And he was involved in student politics. He was involved in ANC underground. He might have been involved with activities, the MK, but he was not sectarian. Kuloo ndawo ayefike kuyo kuthetha into ethile, he was curious, he would listen and participate, angathi hayi nothina sibhetere kunabanye abantu. So I would rather remember and talk about uBathandwa in that sense here, rather than ndithi uBathandwa wayemele umbutho othile and lo mbutho exclusively, because that would not be the Bathandwa endiyaziyo. Bathandwa was flexible, he was open-minded, he was open to learn from whatever source, you see, as even though Tatu Mkebe was trying to show kwinto yase-UNITRA and so on. So yeah, so it's difficult for me to give him a label, especially in the way labels work today, that if ugumbutho othile, we are not supposed to even talk about other organizations. If ever there's anything we can learn from uBathandwa, into yoba funeka sibe open-minded, we must learn to work together, singaworshipi political slogans and political organizations. We must worship umzabalazo, the struggle and the need and the development broadly. And I think the last one, Jena Gukumbuza, is just for Umelani. Umelani was not sure about dates and so on. Umelani, they were kicked out during the funeral and went back to Cape Town. At the time, people remember, those abayas into Alab will remember we were arrested just before the funeral. And asakwazi umngcwaba uBathandwa. And so Melanie gelxesha bagxothwayo sasingekho thina. But uMelanie came back. He came back and waynesibindi. She came back, and at the time, we were with Nondumiso. There was Untri, Untwana. Somebody said, "Man, mention magam." It's difficult for me not to do that, and because abantu bazawulibalega. And so Untri na wayekhona apha ulanto uMatsipa Twana, and I remember ngeli xesha athetha ngayo ixesha le-curfew, that was the time when the police wanted to banish us. And uMelanie was there, and I remember ixesha ndibanjwayo mna. And in fact, people came to me, besitsho, man, look, lamapolisa lana zadakubulalela aya kukhangela and so on. So we decided with Melanie, with Nondumiso, with, I think of you and so, but I know, look, why don't you go to them and ask them what they want from you and so on. So I went to the police with Melanie, with Nondumiso, but it depended on because I knew they were going to detain me and so on. So we went there and the Sawa was detained and Melanie was there. And I mean, those are some of the things that we shouldn't forget. Melanie was very loyal to the cause of this area and very loyal to Bathandwa. Nyana ka Melanie, she didn't hesitate to name him Bathandwa when she gave birth to him. I think, I don't know where the corner enye mvulane ndiyilibele.
No, I think we'll cover Shezonge, Prof.
Yeah.
I know that Comrade Pumezo wanted to make some additions, additional comments. Comrade Pumezo.
Okay, engosi Comrade Mthetho. Ndiyabulela le nkcazelo ka Prof Msebeza. But into endifuna uyithetha ukumncedisa kule nto into yokuba okokuqala uBathandwa zange athunywe mbutho okanye kokwabo ukuba enze zonke ezaa nto ezenza. Wajonga nje imeko yabantu bakokwabo, that is ke sonke ke abantu abahleli elihluphekweni. Waphakama waqonda into yoba makahamba ukwenza into njengoba siyambona uba ejonga izinto ezinothi zibe luncedo ekuhlaleni. Uyayibona organizer into zamanzi, esomba, elima, encedisa abantu generally. Andikoba wayithunywe kokwabo loo nto. Okokuqala uBathandwa belongs to all of us. Laa nto yokokuba mhlawumbi, why uba kubekho le nto, I think iya kulaa nto bendiyithetha earlier yokokuba I don't think we should hide okanye mhlawumbi singazithethi ezi zinto kuba siyayibona imeko mhlawumbi ungathi iWest today imeko yasecala nazonke indawo ezifana necala apha eSouth Africa. So and uzange ahlale njeni wayengenazo ii-resources but i-resource yayinguye, uyabona, nengqondo yakhe nomzimba wakhe wahamba eyokuncedisa engakhange acelwe mntu. Loo nto ithetha ukuthi ke ngokuna, for instance, ufumanisa uba abantu balindele into yoba makubekho umntu ozobaxelela uba mabenze ntoni na, bafanele ulutsha lwangoku lufunde loo nto apha kuBathandwa. Eyesibini into, yabona lo mcimbi woba mhlawumbi waye kwiinto ze-PAC okanye ANC okanye azapho, I'm not so sure about how relevant that is because uBathandwa belongs to all the people of South Africa. And ube ngumzekelo zange into ezi-slogans nentoni na kuba ii-organizations, you must know they come and go but abantu basoko bekhona, and what is important into yokuba wayejonge equality of life yabantu uba ayi-improve equality of life, not to say uba mhlawumbi mababhilonge kwi-organization ethile okanye ethile. Wayesilwa ezi social injustices sizibonayo ezazikhona even nangoko. So I think that ibalulekile le nto basi-starting point, so kokuba sizame ukuvusa isazela, notisha nofundisa abantwana bethu into yoba mabalandele lo mzekelo kaBathandwa kuba le nto esenza nguBathandwa kukhona ifunekayo ngoku more than even probably ngeleya xesha. Yes, I'm not trying to sort of like, underestimate ubunzima balaa xesha kodwa unzima ngoku. So ulutsha lunothi lufunde loo nto kwizinto ezasenza nguBathandwa. Sibe sicalucalula into yoba mhlawumbi wayeyenza le nto under eyiphi na i-organization. I think that's I wanted to uba ndincedise uProf ngaloo mazwi la. Enkosi.
Enkosi Kawan-Pumezo. Comrade Papama, your hand is up. Floor is yours. Papama, unmute yourself. Thank you.
Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili. Mandibulise kubantu abakhulu abalapha. I've noted that Udili's Ndaba ingathi sesishile. Mine is an expression of gratitude like everyone else, but I think the kuchukunyiswa ilento ethethwa nguprof about the relationship between the young and the old. And I think that into kufuneka siyiphawule, and perhaps in line with the question, affiliations Bathandwa Ndondo. You know, one of the things that concerns me about South Africa today is that iskingati illegitimacy yoba ngumuntu omtsha is only understood through political forums and terrain. And iskingati, there is no intrinsic value in just being a young person within a community. So we need to find a way to reconnect with that intrinsic value so that us discuss the importance of lucha, singayijongi only from the political aspect. Because what we risk doing is we risk saying into okubana ulucha ngabantu who are ticking time bombs, who are relevant in times of conflict, and we don't seem to have, as a society, an image of their activities in the current status of the country. We don't seem to have a role that we say we can expect them to perform in the current state. And even when you look around now in the political terrain, you see the names of Cindy Somakaka. You see a picture of Andile Lungisa going to jail. And that seems to be the domineering picture of the way we should think about youth in South Africa. When in fact, youth are the most unemployed, they face the biggest plight in the country. So I think that the political spirituality of Bathandwa Ndondo that enables him to transcend all these barriers and distinguishing forums that we want to associate people with is something that we need to reconnect with. And lastly, the question that was asked, Ndobana, xa kanje, sifuna ukwenzani, what do we want to achieve with a forum of this nature? And I'd like to argue that as we want to decolonize education, for instance, and as it is becoming increasingly obvious that a lot of the formal learning institutions, curriculums were not necessarily geared towards the development of our own communities, like Otala and so on. As forums are actually going to be the new institutes of knowledge production and development. And I mean, if you want to take on a more sophisticated discussion around the fourth industrial revolution and the nature of courses and the future of work that we need to start experimenting with, universities that are not going to be too quick to come up with those new knowledge types that pave the way forward. So I think we need to strengthen this conversation intergenerationally between young and old. Ingasoloko iba in the time when we have to complain about each other, or when we have to talk about a young person in the context of him having left us or having been someone in our history, so that we can start identifying young people around us who are showing the promise of the kind of South Africa that we want. And goes.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments, comrades? Comrade Otto, there was a question from, I think, Umeya earlier, and I know Prof promised that you'll also try and deal with that question. The link to events, the 12th September and the 24th, that September period. Do you want to come in there, Comrade Otto? I'm also looking for other hands. I'm told that Comrade Advocate is back on here. So if there are questions and for him, comrades can also pose such questions. Otto?
Mhlanga phambili, putting me on the spot. I think La period here 12 September to la 24th is also a period that needs to be documented properly. But certainly I was not in the leadership of the students at that time, but I was closer to some of the leaders, like yourself, Mteto, and yeah, that's one thing that I want to mention. But yes, ngala 12 there was an arrangement to commemorate Steve Biko. And basically, I think the argument was that Lendo Lena was also influenced and triggered by what was happening eTranskei. I think abantu abayikhumbulayo i-Israel ndawo. I mean, I would remember the kwakubakho ii-celebrations zaseGqeberha zeenkosi ezithile kunonesi kwapho kwabe kudla ngobakho ii-celebrations ezi-involva nezikolo. And I think a question that was being raised by students ngelaa xesha was xa kukwazi ukucelebreyithwa ezi nkosi zakoMagqeberha, and why kungacelebhreyithwa abantu esibaziyo uba bebe negalelo kumzabalazo wethu like uSteve Biko. And i-12 of September ke was organized around Lolanto Kalondo leyo. And I'm not sure how much detail I should give, because I don't know when the prepare. One would have to recall as they happened. But what I remember is that on the day, or a day before, let me go a day before, I think on the 24th, principal wethu eqala high, Mr. Kuma, might have heard ukuthi there's something eplanwayo by some learners apha eqala high. And I remember in the afternoon, I think afternoon classes, they came to the class. Class year two were together, Nomteto. I think it was 10A. They came to the class and started telling us that this is a period, a state of emergency. Ama police have a right to shoot, to kill anyone who they think is contravening certain laws of the homeland. And he started saying that he knows that there's something that is planned for tomorrow, and if that is the case, we should be aware that we can be killed by the police. And on he was with Mr. Slinger. We were calling him Use Rose. We called him Use Rose. I think he was trying to put Mrs. Slinger on the spot, thinking that Mrs. Slinger might have been one of the teachers who were behind some of these activities, because he wanted Mrs. Slinger to confirm what he was saying. That is the principal. So yeah, that was the 23rd. Then on the 24th, of course, there were discussions by students before the principal came in, and thereafter we had our our discussions in the class with about what's going to happen the following day. On the 24th, there was this activity that started, and some of us were already warned that the police were already around. There were a number of vans that were seen in the plantation, some of them on the way towards Manzimtak. And immediately the activity started. The vans came and then started chasing learners around. Some ran up the mountain, and we were dispersed. And I think we were given about a week to come with our parents. And when, during that period between the 24th and the day when our parents had to come, were called with our parents to school. There were a lot of developments. Some people were, there were detentions of some people. I think Sonwabo was one of them, Teto, and others. So that was the beginning of detentions. And on the day, I think that the detentions started happening after we came back from the suspended classes, and on the day when we were the parents were at school, there was another disruption that happened. And this happened when there was a Sister Loretta who happened to be part of the meeting of the parents. And apparently she was arguing inside the meeting that why don't the meeting allow leaders of the students to be part of the meeting, so that they put across their side of the story, so that we are not listening to one side only. And the suggestion was shot down, and she walked out, and she started addressing us outside in the schoolyard. And after when the meeting, the parents and the principal finished, school management finished the meeting, they called us to the assembly. And then that's when there was a commotion. The Sister Loretta started asking Uti, can she address the meeting, and can she be allowed to talk to us? And now the details now are not so clear, but what I remember is that when she was cut while she was trying to speak by the chairperson, I think it was Mr. Koboto, Reverend Koboto, she left the school, walked out, and a group of us, I think a large group of us as members, followed her, and we went to the social center. That's when we were rounded up by the police whilst we were having a meeting. She was briefing us about developments, discussions in the meeting, and why she decided to rebel against the management in the meeting. And we were rounded up by the police, and then that's when we were they were detained, and some were detained for longer periods of time. I think let me stop there. Maybe Teto would add some details.
Okay. I'm looking at the time. I was told that we must be done in one. I think Comrade ought to have covered the period, and in his initial input, he mentioned in the ngala period ka 84, 85. South Africa as a whole was in flames. And in a way, young people, even in the Bantustan, learned the yaba impact. I think comrades would remember just before la 12th September, there were pamphlets as a corner. We'll also see the graffiti as back corner by Dolopi. Because Yailela clash and no one knew who was responsible. I can tell you now, even though comrades would say we were leaders during that time, I was not aware who was responsible for the pamphleting that happened in the lead up to the 12th. I don't know who were the authors. And then even the graffiti, I was not aware who was involved. And I think the reason of not knowing it was necessary at that point because political activities were sort of banned. But there were discussions between some of the comrades, like Upeji, for example. We had discussions about the pamphlet, SISI reader. And then we began to say, what is it that we can do? Are we going to respond to the pamphlet? So I think that initiative of engaging what we picked up explains what had to happen at Kalahari. And I'm sure even other students who responded, Babes fundele the pamphlet. So we began to consciously organize izinto for by Indo can start. The plan was to start the thing in a break your car. So that's a disrupti or mayor. But unfortunately, izinto zaye zajika because I think ukoma wenza something eyenza into baku izinto zingenzeki according to the plan. I don't want to be holding amakabana, but I think what was important, we student activists at the time, comrade Bejile was Congress inclined, from the movement. But what was important was that he was open to engage and talk with other comrades who necessarily didn't agree with the politics of the ANC. I was one of those who didn't really share politics of the ANC, but we engaged and united in what we did. Even the engagement with Loretta, we met with her to explain certain things and what we thought are the concerns of students. And in a way, she got convinced with the position of the students, and hence she played the role she played as Kawan Otto. But a short answer, Comrade Mayor, I think as our events, 12 and the 24, zinandokwenza nento yayisenzeka South Africa at the time. So without wasting ixesha elininzi, Comrade Prof, do you want to make a concluding remarks? And then from there, I would request, there were questions about where to with these things. I would request Comrade Pura and Lwazi to just speak to some of the EZO questions about what what are the plans, because these are ongoing activities as CALUSA to continue with what Comrade Bathandwa did to try and improve the lives of our people and build activism in a different way under this new dispensation. So Comrade Bhura and Lwazi, before Space Yavala, ask them to batete on where to with what we are trying to do in the involvement of the youth, because the question of youth, what is it that CALUSA is doing? I would give them a pleasure to do that. I see power as a hand there. I'll give you power. If there's another hand, I'll give you two. And then after that, we'll go to Prof. And then Upura and Nolwazi will round up for us to close. Power, floor is yours. Unmute yourself.
Mandibulise nam Mandla Nkosi Mqwetyana. Hayi ndizama ukuncedisa kule ndawo uqabane umthetho no-Otto bedlule kuyo. Kuyinene konto bana there was a lot eyisenzeka ecala ngale period, really igap le period kabla meya, because much as ba ndandihlala ndifunda eMathanzima ndimkile edolophini ngezizathu ezithile ndihlala elalini ereserve. There's a lot of organization eyiqhubeka around le period from i-12 uzoma nge-24. I remember gabla u-Otto esitsho there was a lot eyiplaniwe nathi pamphlets sasizifumana siseMathanzima, and i-harassment esasiyifumana yayingapha koqonda. I remember ndilele phezu kweflat noMayekiso or abanye bawumazi uMayekiso. Kodwa ke into esasiyiplanile yadisruptwa kukufika kwevan zamapolisa. Babethwa kabanye boqabela koMasifuna Undila. I think ndayozimela eMdantsane ngala period. Ndizama ukuthi ke uku-organize kwe-youth ngala period, it was not necessarily based edolophini. Strategy sasikhona ekwakufuneka singabazanga abantu ababe behind, but ke some abanye babo were able basiza associate nabo, and there was a lot eyiqhubeka all over Cala, that is including iMathanzima. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thanks, Comrade Power. Prof.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think, I mean, I've said enough, I mean, for this occasion, and maybe in the noted without repeating now myself and talking about things that I've already referred to, is that in the mid-80s, Dan Lap and Ranshai, the bookshop, and it was a lovely spot because I met all sorts of people. And one of the things, as a guy in Toba, we bought a sort of a copier, photocopying machine. I think probably one of the first to have a photocopying machine, which was used by a range of people. And I remember that some of the people ababesebenza la copier the students, there's the pamphlets and leaflets that Comrade Mtetwa talked about. So I mean, I was in that position where you would know what was happening, who came, who bought which book, and sometimes abantu bazawuza bancokole and about the latest material esinayo, Children of Soweto, those books, you know, and about what struck me ngelaa xesha yayilaa curiosity yolutsha. Very curious. I don't know noba bezifunda na phofu ezi ncwadi, but yayikhona laa eagerness bona abantu, they buy newspapers, they buy magazines we used to sell on a work in progress, it was a staff writer and so on. But you know, they were buying them, whether they were reading them and you know, using them, I don't know. But you know, it was fascinating. And then the went to Cape Town, pursued my studies, and Dabuya, I think late 80s, after the reburial ka Nkosi Kumkani Sabata. And Icala was a changed place. And la, unity yaikona, that curiosity yaikona, that reading culture, openness, broad-mindedness yabantu bencokola without, bezifaka kwi-camps ezithile into yoba I belong to this organization, political organization, and if you do not, you are my enemy, I can't talk to you. It was disappearing. And it was quite a shame umntu owayemka Icala indawo where people were talking to each other. Ndibuya ngoku abantu sebenika labels and ubona ba bangabulalana nobulalana. Kukho abe-PAC, kukho abe-ANC, I don't know, thina sasifaka kwi-camps nge-camps and so on. So what I think I would like to say when we remember Bathandwa is that at least Bathandwa, belonged to the era and proud ngayo yaseCala ye mid-80s, where people came together and discussed things fiercely. Didn't mean that we always agreed with each other, but there was always that space for discussion, openness, and so on, and sharing of ideas. He belongs now to that era, and I think for the youth of today, because this is a responsibility of youth, is that youth when they remember Bathandwa, they should also remember this sort of picture that I'm trying to depict of a Cala where young people talked to each other, where young people talked with elderly people, and where there were no tensions, and where party politics were not there, dividing people the way they are doing today. And the last point now, it's very related to this. Last point I would like to make is that we were very political in the mid-80s, and we knew that we couldn't develop without knowledge of our history, politics, and so on. But we drew a distinction between politics of development and party politics. And I think that, for a future year to where we are in our future, we should place more stress on the politics of development rather than this party politics that are tearing us apart and are not doing us any favor. So with those words now, I would like to say thank you. And this event was organized by young people, Olwazi, Opura, and so on, which makes some of us who are now gray and so on, very proud. And I'm keen to hear what they have in mind about future events. And goes.
Okay, Sabulela. I think siyazibulela zonke izithethe Comrade Melani, Mama Patriswa, Advocate Prof, Ukolo, and all the comrades who were making comments and comrades who were participating in this forum. I think ngosiphathekile wacela uba kukho indawo aleqa kuyo. That's why aye wahamba. Comrade Lwazi and Comrade Bura, do you want to conclude? It's 1 o'clock now. Can you just briefly say where to with this and what are the plans?
Okay, thanks, Comrade Mteto. Going forward, we'll have more of these discussions on Zoom, which will then be also broadcasted on the platform. We created a platform called Voices of Liberations. That's where we're hosting this actual Zoom, and more information will come out of that platform. So we will all meet on that Voices of Liberation platform and have these sort of discussions. Comrade Lwazi will speak about the next event, which is happening tomorrow. And then going forward, like I said, we will have more, and the conversation will also be directed by, will be directed by our collective in terms of what issues should we address going forward. And also obviously the follow-up to, the case of Bathandwa Ndondo, like, what needs to be done to make sure that his legacy is always there. I'll write down the details for the website on the chat, and if everyone can go onto the website and subscribe, or those who haven't, they can go to the website, subscribe, and then we'll keep you in touch with information on your email in terms of upcoming events. And also we have social media platforms, a Facebook page called Voices of Liberation, where we will also engage there on a day-to-day basis each time we have content that we put up there. Thanks, Comrade Lwazi.
Sure, thanks, Comrade Bora. To add on, or maybe to answer to the question, where to from here, and Klambi to speak about the role of the youth today. CALUSA works with young people and has organized them into a youth commune. So as the Prof has mentioned, this seminar was organized by the youth commune, CALUSA. So tomorrow, what was happening is that we are hosting another seminar. It will focus on local government. Part of the work we do is to focus on development. So local government has been identified as one of institutions of the state which are at the central of local, which are supposed to be driving development in communities. But there are challenges with the municipality is going through. So those will be unpacked in tomorrow's seminar. So people can join us for tomorrow's seminar. It will be focusing on the performance of the municipality and the responses of civil society on what the performance of the municipality has been for the past 5 years. So among the guests, we'll be having the Auditor General of South Africa, who audits the financial statements of municipalities and other state entities. So the conversations will continue. Tomorrow is one of the main conversations we continue to have. And as Comrade Bura has mentioned, that we want it to be the people who drive the conversations. So if you let us know of any subject of interest, we'll see how we can organize a seminar around that, and we meet on this platform again. Thank you.
Thanks, Comrade Lwazi. And about Comrade, we requested that you give us your email addresses and then we'll be in touch. I know I see now there's a hand. I want to close this by 10 past. So I'm only giving Comrade Nomvuzo. And then after that, I see Comrade Otto unmuted, I'll also give you. And
No.
Okay. And then the last person to give to Comrade Pumezo a vote of thanks is our Comrade Nopot.
Enkosi ba umhlala ngaphambili ngusibusiso Nophote ayingoma unomvuzo. I just wanted to add on izinto nje ezincinci ezishiwo nguComrade Bura nolwazi kukho laa mbuzo othi what to from now. Kona loo nto ixhomekeke kwindlela abantu nabo abazawusincedisa ngayo, because we need them to keep on checking phaya kwi-website because izinto will be loaded phaa kulaa site Voice of Liberation. Then umntu angamane ezinika ithuba amane engena phaa ajonge kwi-events. Kona we will keep on updating i-content, even nakulaa tab ye-information hub. There's a lot of things you will see articles so as to keep abantu informed. The main aim of creating this platform was for information ebantwini to be just a click away. So enkosi mhlala ngaphambili.
Okay, thanks, Bo. Comrade Pumezo.
Enkosi Comrade Mthetho. No, okokwam njena ndifuna ukwenza ilizwi lombulelo. CALUSA, Prof Unsabeza no-advocate Unsabeza nabo zonke izithethi ebeziye uMathuse engekho enjalo bethe uyahamba. Ndifuna ukwenza ilizwi lombulelo ongazenzisiyo ngeligalelo lenzileyo. Le nto ingathathwa iqhube ibheke phambili ukwenzela uba yenzeke nakwezinye indawo lo msebenzi uba wakho apho iqala khona into inwenwe iye kwezinye indawo. Ngoko ndifuna ukwenza ke ilizwi lombulelo nangabantu abaye bazixhamla ngoba bayeke zonke izinto zabo namhlanje ba-attende le session. Ngamana ningathi xa nihambayo nibheka phambili ebomini nigcine le nto singathendi nje just sessions, yabona, ibe isinike loo nto ii-ideas zokokuba kwezi ndawo sihlala kuzo senze nathi ii-efforts ezifana nezenziwa yiCALUSA apho kuloo ngingqi yaseCala. Sinxibelelane, siphefumlelane. Ndiyavuya into yoba kukho newebsite yeCALUSA apho sinokuthi xa sifuna i-material okanye mhlawumbi ii-ideas zokuncedisa ukuba kufuneka sincedisile practically, not just theoretically but also practically. But ndiyayibulela kakhulu elo ngamana niqhubekisana ngolu hlobo lonke ixesha. Mandiyeke kuloo ndawo Mthetho. Enkosi kakhulu bhuti.
Oya, siyabulela. Maqabane masivaleni, siyabulela umbulelo senowufumene. Hopefully abanye benu bawungena ngomso kule seminar thethe ngayo ulwazi. Thank you.
Enkosi mhlala phambili.
Enkosi kakhulu.
Okay.